Welcome to our Spotlights on Creation series. Many people through history have been naturalists. Long before degrees were being handed out by universities, naturalists were busy discovering facts about the natural world. Studying animals and plants, interactions of nature, and the world in which we live are all the focus of the naturalist. That is the focus of our programs, and since naturalists have been around a lot longer than evolutionists, we don't have to include any of their destructive speculations. So we are going to look at natural science without evolution. In this episode of our Spotlights on Creation, we are going to explore the huge variety of invertebrates that live in the oceans. God has chosen to create a bewildering range of shapes and survival strategies. I love exploring coastlines, discovering whatever is hiding in tide pools or crawling through salt marshes. Conditions are often rough, with high winds and dangerous waves regular companions. But it all becomes worth it when a rare crab or beautiful sea star appears. Finding an octopus is always an unusual treat, but catching one is even harder. I may have 10 fingers, but they have 8 arms, and they are too fragile and squishy to grip without hurting them. Swimming with jellyfish is easier, but more dangerous. Off Padre Island, Texas, we swam with the beautiful but deadly Portuguese man-of-war. It was a challenge to keep an eye out for these quiet, floating purple gas bags. Much more relaxing was watching thousands of moon jellies pulse along the shore of Vancouver Island, British Columbia. Jellies seem as alien as any life God has made, beautiful but strange. One of my favorite seashore memories came not in a remote wilderness, but right next to the gridlock of Los Angeles. In a quiet tide pool, we discovered a group of California black sea hares laying eggs. These huge relatives of snails and slugs were creating masses of eggs glued to the seaweeds and rocks. I had to pry one out to test the weight. Holding the world's largest gastropod was like holding a sack of slimy rubber, a very unusual thrill. So enjoy this whirlwind tour of some of the strangest and most beautiful of God's grand design. This Spotlight on Creation is part of a series of around 20, many of which are only available on DVD. Visit our website to order them all, and be sure to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss any of our new videos. So enjoy a sample of natural science without evolution.
If we ever needed complete proof that animals were not placed on Earth for humans to exploit and enslave, we need look no farther than the teeming throngs of life found in the oceans. These include fish and mammals, birds and reptiles, all designed for life in salt water. But these are by far the minority of the underwater creation. In fact, the more we study sea life, the more we find that we have barely scratched the surface of what God has placed in His world. We are constantly discovering new forms of sea life. Many animals in the ocean have never been used by humans for anything, as we didn't even know they existed. There is no way to cover all the marine invertebrates out there, so we will just focus on a few of the major groups to showcase the diversity of life God decided to craft. The mollusks are one of the major groups, with many different variations. Many have a single spiral shell with some of the most exquisite designs in nature, as seen on many sandy beaches when old shells wash ashore. All have the basic snail design: a single large foot for crawling locomotion that can be retracted into their own personal motorhome. Other mollusks have two shells held together by a strong hinge, such as the clams and mussels. These are filter feeders that decontaminate large volumes of seawater as they filter out both food and pollutants. Most of these are sedentary, anchored tightly to rocks or buried in the mud. But scallops are able to clap their way through the water to escape predators. Some reefs are studded with giant clams in electric colors and intricate patterns, sometimes reaching 6 feet across. Chambered nautilus have up to 100 tentacles and precisely control their buoyancy in the water, gently rising and falling deep underwater. Some mollusks have no shell at all, like nudibranchs in their neon rainbow of colors. The most fanciful of all are the octopus, squid, and cuttlefish. These are incredible animals with super skills and intelligence. They can change color in a flash and communicate using words of light and pattern on their skin. Crustaceans are another large group that come in many forms. They tend to have bodies of many segments protected by multi-piece armor. Most have lots of legs and big claws for catching and cutting food. The shrimps, lobsters, and crabs are all part of this group, and they can be formidable tanks prowling the ocean floor, or delicate swimmers of the open sea. As they grow larger, they have to break out of their inflexible armor, and a new coat of mail hardens in the right size. Huge whales eat tons of krill, an abundant form of shrimp usually found in icy water. Hermit crabs live in abandoned snail shells. As they grow larger, they have to find a new shell that fits. Barnacles glue their head to a solid surface and collect food with their foot, protected by a complicated shell. Isopods and beach fleas are common on sandy beaches, feeding on shore flotsam. Many marine animals are microscopic. Sponges are single-celled animals that cooperate to form a colony. They each specialize in a different job, working together in amazing unity. Break them down to their single cells and they will soon reassemble back to their original colony form. Bryozoans also form colonies, resembling leafy plants or graceful geometrical designs. It's hard to visualize any of these as animals, since they look so much like seaweed. Another group that resembles plants are the cnidarians. All in this group are active predators, catching food with grasping tentacles armed with stinging cells. On the large end are the anemones, familiar residents of coastal tide pools. Underwater, they spread their colorful tentacles to feed. But most contract into water-retaining balls at low tide. On the tiny end are the corals, one of the greatest builders in nature. Each individual animal secretes minerals that add to the whole reef, creating structures that can be seen from space. Without coral, a huge segment of ocean life would be impossible, as the reefs provide food and shelter for the greatest diversity of life found in the ocean. Coral reefs are the water equivalent of tropical rainforests on land, biodiversity hotspots swarming with amazing forms of life. Soft corals are a closely related group that creates no reef, since their soft bodies never secrete a mineral armor coating. They can be colorful fans adorning the reef, or long whips hanging off undersea cliffs. Finally, the cnidarians include the very strange jellies, These transparent blobs lazily drift through the water, pumping their bell-shaped bodies to steer themselves. They have no brain or nervous system, but still can gather into groups of millions as they wander the currents. Some reach surprising sizes. The colonial Portuguese man-of-war grows 60-foot tentacles, which is impressive, until compared with the 200-foot tentacles of a giant jelly that can weigh 2,000 pounds. Comb jellies are bioluminescent jewels with rows of shimmering cilia that propel these transparent bells through the water, sometimes in vast schools. The varied groups of worms are a major part of marine life. These come in many forms: segmented, acorn, flat, ribbon, peanut, and roundworms, to name a few. Some are parasitic, living on or in other animals. But many live free as predators or scavengers, crawling through reefs and tide pools in search of food. Adult sizes vary from 1/10 of an inch to 10 feet long. Tube worms filter feed plankton when they emerge from their hard home tube. Flatworms cut into pieces regenerate into a new worm from each piece within a week. Echinoderms are very strange animals. This group includes the sea stars, brittle stars, cucumbers, sand dollars, and urchins. Despite their varied forms, they all share a structure of internal chambers filled by water. This gives them pressure to control and move a system of hundreds of tube feet. They can move on these feet like living conveyor belts, or pry open shells with amazing strength to access a meal. Sea stars eat by pouring out their stomach onto prey and digesting it externally. Urchins and sand dollars live in a shell of armor, while cucumbers are usually soft. And sea stars can be armored or soft. Some can regenerate from serious injury, like the stars that can regrow lost arms. So what can we learn from this amazing panoply of life? First of all, God places animals in places we don't expect, in every possible nook and cranny. Finding a spot in the ocean without a tiny resident is very difficult. Second, the range of designs that God came up with is truly astonishing. If we didn't see a certain animal, we would never believe them to be possible. Some of the invertebrates are so unbelievable that we marvel at every new design discovered, and the new discoveries will never end. Most of the world's oceans remain unknown to us. Modern divers can usually explore from the surface to about 150 feet down. But the depth of most of the sea is far greater, from 2 to 7 miles. An amazing 95% of the water-covered parts of the planet are as truly unexplored as Mars or Venus. Every time we send cameras down to these unknown areas, we discover new and unusual animals living in places we never knew life could exist. It is still a mystery to us what God's purpose for these animals are. What we do know is that God loves diversity, and all His creations fulfill critical roles in His vast and interlocking design.